Learner controlled instruction (LCI) refers to a situation when a learner controls the teaching learning situation. Teacher becomes an observer, helper, and provides assistance to the learners and thus play a secondary role. LCI assumes that learners have the capacity of decision making and problem solving. The teaching transaction is based on modern theory of human organization, which is task and relationship centered. John Brubaker has defined the terms teaching in reference with learner control instruction as teaching is an arrangement and manipulation of learning situations in which there are gaps and obstructions which a learner will seek to overcome, from which he will learn in the course of doing so. The following are the main strategies of learner controlled instruction: Keller plan, program instruction, computer assisted instruction, mastery learning, independent study strategy, review strategy of teaching. Learner controlled instruction is different from independent study not only because it is delivered on a computer rather than a paper media. Today, learner controlled instruction is used as a pre-work or for initial skill building before the learner heads into learning laboratory. Then, teachers act as a coach, guiding the learner through on-job activities that make their new skills operational. It is evident from the definition of teaching that a student is more active than the teacher. It is the responsibility of a teacher is to assist the learner by creating learning situations. In teacher-controlled instruction (TCI), the sequence of content is determined by the teacher logically, which may not be workable psychologically. In LCI, the sequence of content is psychologically workable, which has been decided by the learner. People taking part in the learner controls instruction training will feel as though they are in control. They will see a clear payoff for their learning and an obvious connection between what they are learning and what they have already experienced. Individualized learning is something of a blanket term covering a wide range of activities. The premise that all students are individuals and there are many permutations and combinations of individual difference leads one to conclude that a totally teacher-centered approach to teaching is likely to be inadequate. Every student is an individual and a class of students is a heterogeneous regarding background and prior knowledge of a subject. Self-pacing helps in resolving the initial inequalities in a group. Students can be diverted to complementary study packages, remedial material, materials constructed for specific needs, or study in small groups of 2 or 3 or individually under the tutors. Fellow students, senior class students, or teachers can help in the organization of the courses for individual learning or in the testing program. During the 60s, independent learning was encouraged through small programmed instruction which require the students to work through small steps of subject material that was sequenced very carefully. Students were frequently rewarded by confirmation of their correctness of their responses. Norman Taudo's branching programs helped students who selected an incorrect response by directing them to remedial branching frames. Further research work of Major, Task and Scott (1961–1972) indicated the need to match the learning style of the student and the way in which the learning material was structured, giving importance to the student rather than the teacher to have control over the sequences of topic in a learning program. The most recent approaches to independent learning are Keller Plan and audio tutorial. These approaches allow the students to work through the learning material in their own way. However, they have mastered a bulk of work of mini course before proceeding to the next. Independent learning enable students on their own to formulate problems, find answers through systematic procedures or references work, hypothesizing, experimenting, and fieldwork, and evaluate one's own progress and achievement. It is of value to a student of high ability as well as to a student who needs time to go at his own pace and perhaps with the help of a remedial program. The teacher or tutor has to be conscientious and capable of providing initial enthusiasm, guidance at regular intervals, and encouragement for further progress. As there is no pressure for competing with the peer group, the students at work at their own pace to complete a course or a program. Independent learning would generally take up some of the following form: assignment work, laboratory work, reference reading, programmed learning, mastery learning, learning by color plan, learning through audio-visual aids such as films, film strips, slides, cassettes, tapes, and television. Centers of Educational Technology, self-learning centers, and libraries in colleges and university departments of education could cater the needs of those students who would like to enrich the teaching learning process by independent study. In this chapter, programmed learning, instruction, and computer-aided instruction are discussed in detail. The programmed instruction is a new strategy of teaching. It is highly individualized instructional strategy for the modification of behavior. It is used for instructional purpose, but it can also be employed as a mechanism of feedback device for improving teaching efficiency. The theoretical knowledge of programmed instruction is essential to use it as a feedback device for the modification of teacher behavior. The origin of modern program instruction is far from psychology of learning and not from technology. It is an application of operational conditioning learning theory to teaching learning situations. It got a historical momentum only after the publication of Science of Learning and Art of Teaching article by B. F. Skinner in 1954. Programmed instruction has been defined as a method of given individualized instructions in which the students are active and proceeds at their own pace and is provided with immediate knowledge of result. The physical presence of teacher is not essential in this strategy. Susan Markle has tried to give a wider definition. It is a method of designing a reproducible sequence of instructional events to produce a measurable and consistent effect on behavior of each and every acceptable student. Although Skinner's initial programmed instruction format has undergone many transformations, most adaptations retain three essential features: an ordered sequence of items, either questions or statements, to which the student is asked to respond; student response, which may be in the form of filling in the blank, recalling the answer to a question, selecting from among a series of answers, or solving a problem; provision for immediate response confirmation, sometimes within the program frame itself, but usually in a different location, as on the next page in the program textbook, or in a separate window in the teaching machine. A good programmed instruction is based on the principles of learning. The principles on which the programmed instruction is based are discovered in psychological laboratories. There are 5 fundamental principles of programmed instruction: principle of small step, principle of active responding, principle of immediate confirmation, principle of self-facing, principle of student testing. These principles are functional in nature and explain the procedure of program instruction strategy. The brief description of these principles is given below. Principle of small step. The subject matter is broken down into sequence of small steps. A student can take a step at a time. He has to read the small step by being active. Principle of active responding. The students learn that they should actively respond as they learn. The learner has to construct the response. It is an integral part of learning. Principle of immediate confirmation. The student learns best if the student confirms the response immediately. The confirmation provides the reinforcement to the learner. Principle of self-pacing. In programming, each student can work each step as slowly as quickly as they can. This is known as principle of self-pacing. Principle of student testing. Students leave the record of their study because they have to write responses for each step on a response sheet. This reminds the principle of student testing. The programmed instruction has the following basic assumptions. Students learn better by being active, if motivated to learn by confirming responses, if the content matter is presented in small steps, if they commit for minimum errors in their learning, if the sequence of content is psychologically workable, if the prerequisites are specified. In programmed instruction, the sequence of content elements is determined empirically, which is psychologically workable as controlled by the learner. The term LCI is very popular in programmed instruction. The objectives of this strategy have been summarized as follows: to help the students to learn by doing, to provide situations to enable students to learn at their own pace, to help students to learn without the presence of teacher, to present the content in a controlled manner and in logically related steps, to study by themselves and assess their performance by comparing with the given answers. In programmed instruction, the contents are broken down into pieces of instruction called frames. A frame contains statements and questions. Learners then read the frame and immediately answer the question about the frame. There is an immediate feedback about the correctness of the frame. The following are the main features of programmed instruction strategy. It is not audiovisual device. It is a part of educational technology. It is not a test. It is a new strategy of teaching and learning. It is not the solution of educational problems. It is a new instructional strategy for modification of behavior of the learner. It cannot replace the teacher from the field of teaching because an effective teacher can prepare a good program. It requires more creativity and imaginative efforts to develop highly individualized instruction. The development of program instruction is a challenging job for a teacher. The mastery over the topic, knowledge, and practice of programmed instruction are essential for it. The following steps are important in preparing program instruction material. Selection of topic to be programmed, identify the objectives, content analysis for developing the instructional procedure, writing objectives, entering and terminal in behavioral terms, deciding paradigm and strategy of a program, writing program frames and individual tryout, group tryout and editing the program and preparing final draft, master validation or evaluation of programmed instruction in terms of internal and external criteria. The steps are followed in preparing an effective program or instructional material. The procedure is very time consuming and laborious. The program text is different from conventional text because the workability of the material is determined on the basis of students' responses. During the teaching practice, the teachers are asked to teach a lesson by following the traditional approach of lesson planning. The classroom teaching is recorded or evaluated. After that, they are asked to develop the program instruction frames on the same topic and asked to reteach the same topic to another class of same level. The same criterion measure should be used to record and evaluate the classroom teaching. The experimental studies of this type have yielded significant improving in teaching. The preparation of program frames provide the awareness about the content structure and function as feedback. The following skills are developed by giving the training of programmed instruction. The skills of content analysis and arranging content in a learning sequence. The teachers are able to present the content in small steps. They are able to provide the reinforcement to learners by confirming their responses. The teachers are able to develop the situation for achieving the desired learning objectives. The trainees are able to consider the individual variation and generate the learning situation so that they can learn according to their own pace. The teachers are able to identify the objectives and are able to write them in behavioral terms. The most striking innovation in the field of educational technology is the use of computers. The main objective of computer-aided instruction (CAI) is to provide the needed flexibility for individualizing the educational process. It meets the specific needs of the student in a way in which it is almost impossible to do so in a face-to-face student-teacher relationship. A computer has the facilities to store information as well as retrieve it. The stored information is in a particular computer language so that the computer understands and reacts. When the necessary procedures to process the information are given to it, interacts and manipulates the information, and the answer is typed in a teletypewriter. The different parts of computer that are involved in this process are input equipment, memory store, processing unit, control unit, and output equipment. The input equipment translates the information given to the computer. The processing unit translates the information in terms of several operations such as adding, subtracting, or multiplying, and also selects particular information that is needed, which in turn is translated back to an understandable form by the learner. This is the working of computer in its most simple form. There are two basic characteristics of CAI. The first is that the computer can evaluate a student's learner response instantly, and it indicates whether the response is correct or incorrect on the basis of predetermined keywords identified with it. The computer gives corrective hints or offers general hints when the student's responses correspond to anticipated incorrect answers. It would call for a modified or a new answer. In this way, every student is involved in the learning process as different from a conventional classroom where only a small percentage of students respond to the teacher's questions. Each student responding and receiving necessary feedback through CAI is led towards the goal of effective learning. Secondly, the computer can individualize instruction in a number of specified ways. Instruction can be individualized according to differential aptitude, achievement, and interest. The computer makes note of the learner's performance and progress on the basis of evaluation of ongoing achievement and as per their needs. It can also modify the program for further learning. The prime advantage of this method is its instant response and its flexibility to suit the learner's need and requirements through tutorial interaction and dialogue. CAI is one example where program instruction has been combined with powerful media and technology to produce expensive and impressive learning systems. In this case, the monitoring and feedback functions of a teacher are handled by the computer. CAI is based on the same principles as the ordinary program instruction, but students work from computer terminals. They observe displays shown on the monitor or typed on a computer output instead of programmed textbooks or programmed workbooks. Students type information into the computer or respond to it by pressing the related keys on the computer. In addition to manipulating an interesting, sophisticated and responding equipment, the students find that they cannot cheat as answers are given or appear on the screen only to the students' responses. It also permits the students to proceed according to their abilities and pace of learning. There are a number of ways by which computers can be used for instruction. CAI refers to situations in which a computer is utilized in the learning process. The first application involves utilization of the computer as a record keeper and retriever. Teachers and administrators program the computer in processing data of the students for instruction purpose, such as printing details about students and scheduling students for classes in the case of streaming of students ability-wise or due to large strength of college. For the purpose of guidance and counseling, cumulative records, counsel records, files, and details about occasional interest, aptitude and informational and psychological test results can be stored in the computer and retrieved whenever needed. The second application is to use the computer as a laboratory computing device, which is one of the most frequently used educational applications. A single terminal teletype or electrical typewriter is installed in the classroom with a direct access to an externally placed computer. Students are encouraged to develop their own computer programs relating to their regular classroom assignments. Talented and overachieving students can be encouraged to develop their own software or help the peer group in preparing software to suit the different abilities of the learners. At the tertiary level, this will be a very stimulating experience. The third application of the CAI uses the computer as a tutor. One form of tutoring is to provide drill and practice to the student at the computer terminal. In this form, a complete lesson course is also presented in the computer to the students, and the students keep track of the performance and can give a summary of their performance to the teacher whenever asked for it. The fourth application is simulation, which is effective when presented in CAI. Through specific input, computers develop models of process or structure. Simulated conditions are shown on the computer screen, such as working on the circulatory system of the human body or the effect of instructions in the operation of a system or other models from company management, biology, mathematics, or ecosystem. Such simulations have tremendous potentials of instructional purpose. Simulations are also planned as competitive games to motivate and increase the interest of the learner. The advantages of CAI are the immediate feedback provided by the interactive terminals keeps students interacting and eager to keep trying. Weaker students are obliged to participate actively. They often remain passive in lectures. The computer will wait patiently for an answer and will not express annoyance with wrong response. Interactive graphics make it possible to sample many more illustrations than could be easily shown in a textbook. Mathematical calculations can be done as readily for realistic examples as for artificially simple case that can be solved analytically. Large amount of data can be handled with accuracy. It has the following limitations. A programmer cannot cater for every possible response and may give unexpected and unhelpful responses to an unusual input. The few students are intimidated by the strangeness of a computer terminal, less likely for science students. Packages can become boring if a student is alone at a terminal for too long. Most packages run for an hour or so. A package will not be appreciated unless it has perceived goal and will not be considered important unless it is integrated into a course to an extent of being assessed by a teacher. In LCI, the teachers or mentors will encourage and guide the students. In the end, however, students are ultimately responsible for their own learning. They will need to take some initiative if they want to learn. No one can do it for them, but when they succeed, they can also give themselves much of credit. In a very real sense, students are able to take charge of their own learning and in turn take charge of their own careers. Program learning is a design strategy in which various kinds of intellectual, economic, and motor experiences are provided to learning in a controlled situation through variety. The CAI provides for individual instruction, motivates students to go through a unit or course through its varied presentation modes, and by instant feedback, encourages learners to proceed with the lesson. There is a tremendous saving of students and teachers' time. Computers are adapted to students' changing performance and relate the learning to suit their cognitive potentials. However, computers can never replace teachers as the human aspect is vital for learning and behaviors of the effective domain can only be developed by a teacher. Thank you.